Welcome to What the Biz, where we talk about building successful businesses, balancing life, and all the WTB in between. With your hosts,
I'm Bridget Vector.
And I'm Dan Prochko. Here we go. Another week. Welcome back, everybody. What the Beers. That sounded wrong, but I'm just going to keep rolling. Don't know what that was. Today, we are focusing on a couple of articles that came up regarding younger generations using social media platforms as search engines and how that's impacting businesses. Also talking about, some kinds of content that are really winning right now. And then, talking about more in terms of how to capitalize on it and what you need to do so that you show up in AI citations, as it were. Before we jump in, Bridget, how you doing?
I am doing well. We are gearing up for actually taking a nice little spring break trip. We don't normally follow the spring break schedule, but my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, so my husband's brother and his wife, she's a teacher, and it just so happens that our condo is open in Hilton Head, and so they're like, let's go use it. And so yeah. And it's kind of weird because people listening to this, obviously knowing I'm in accounting, normally accountants don't take time off during tax season.
Ever.
Yeah. But our client files were closed early this year. So we are...
Well, I guess that's the difference between an accountant and a bookkeeper. Once bookkeepers get the books done, we're out. We're done. We're sipping Mai Tais. The moment we're done, we're in.
I wish that was the case.
I know.
Still a lot of advisory work to go on in between. But no, it's just nice because even our clients' tax preparers are done too. So they've gotten their questions answered if there were any, and it's nice to know we're going for a little break here.
Yeah, that's cool. Good for you. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Way to have solid systems in place. We were just talking before coming on. I am neck deep in the course right now, in our live course. We've got our first cohort in. We had our first live coaching. A lot of good feedback. I was really happy with that. And it's always interesting trying to answer questions on the fly. That was the other piece that hit me. We were in the middle of it. I'm like, I asked for questions ahead of time. I didn't get any. Am I going to get them on the fly? This is going to be rough, And I had a couple of moments where a question was like, wait, how do I do that? I have to look this up. And I had to go and look up our process because it's just not everything is top of mind. That's why you document everything, And so it's I'm going to find it. I have this for you. I know exactly how we do this because I do it all the time. It's just not my brain right now for a second. So that whole thing, that happened, but that was fine. That's nothing big. Otherwise,
makes you human.
Yeah, it makes you human. Exactly. Otherwise, it was a great session. Recorded it. They're going to get access to it from here forward. So, course is going well. Otherwise, awesome. That's all. I'm excited for it. That's good. Yeah. So why don't we jump in? Here? So our first story today and topic, I guess we could say, it comes from Sprout Social. Okay. Basically, according to the 2026 Social Media Content Strategy Report, 80% of Gen Z social media users are on Facebook and Instagram. 74% are on YouTube. And another 72% are on TikTok, making these networks the most popular. But the key piece here is that they are using these channels, with TikTok being the most popular, as search engines for product discovery. And so second behind TikTok is Facebook, okay? And it found that Gen Zers are more likely to use TikTok, Instagram, Reddit for staying up to date on the news. So that was interesting. I just thought that this was interesting because with small, businesses, content creation, we don't have huge teams. Getting out content just to promote our products and get them out there is not that easy. And to hear that a whole generation is basically using these platforms specifically for product research, just struck me. It was just interesting, on that front. So in my mind, where I go is if you're going to be posting into these social platforms, I guess let me first ask this: do you use any of these platforms and channels for your product research?
Me personally, it's funny. Like I don't like, I'll go search a company, right? I don't know that
Right?
I use it in the same way. However, there have been, like, if I'm doom scrolling, as you call it, right? Like, there are times that something has come up and I'm like, oh, like, that's an interesting concept or company. And then I start, like, I'm not actively using them as search engines, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I
And
think what's surprising to me is that YouTube isn't on this channel, isn't on this list
yes,
for Gen Zers.
yes, that's very intriguing to me.
Especially because I recently was making a backpack purchase and I bought a backpack. I bought a new backpack. 20 years. I had the same backpack for 20 years. And what's really funny, well, not funny. So I did all this research. I went online, and you know what the first thing I did was? I went to YouTube. Now, maybe that's because I'm a millennial and not a Gen Z. A Gen Z would have gone to TikTok. But what
We're aging ourselves.
Exactly. That's fine. Whatever. But look, I went on YouTube and I was like, best backpacks 2026 for XYZ. And I watched like 5-6 videos. And look, I get that those channels were influencers, so they probably had brand deals or they got, free merch, and it was from the top companies that give, like top giving companies that like to give free merch away, etc. So I had to do some other research because the backpack I had before was not in any of those videos. Okay, so let me just share. I'm a North Face fan. I love North Face. I think they have solid, product. And I had a North Face router backpack for 20 years. And I was wondering, does this backpack stack up? And so I did, research on the top backpacks. And I was seeing like other brands, like tons of other brands. None of these videos were showing the North Face at all. So I had to manually go find the North Face and do the research and literally specifically look up videos about the North Face backpacks, what they look like and everything. I ended up just getting the updated version 20 years later of my same backpack. I think it's just brand loyalty on my part. But I thought it was just interesting. My first step was, let's go to YouTube and search what's out there. What are people talking about? What new things are out there? Because there's always new brands getting created. And so I guess to hear that Gen Z is TikTok, et cetera, it doesn't surprise me, actually, on that front, considering they grew up with social media and TikTok was the premier or the new, that had all the energy behind it when they were getting to social media. So I guess from my perspective is like, yeah, I think it's huge. You've got to have your products out there. You got to be reviewing your own products and getting others, showcasing them.
Yeah. So it does. This brings a few questions to my mind. One, some of these brands that have been around for a long time, are they also not utilizing like the channels in the way that some of these newer brands and newer influence, you know what I mean? Like it brings that question.
It does.
And in this article, they do reference YouTube. So I want to mention in this because it's interesting. It says that they are the only generation to prefer long form video on YouTube. So they are on YouTube, but other generations like the shorter form more, which is interesting. And I think this whole concept, so like I have so many thoughts around this, but I just need to say this out loud for 1 second, because when I was a kid and like my parents were trying to understand pieces of like the internet or like things we were doing, and like I always made fun of them, where I was like, I will never be like you and not be on top of like the latest trends. I am totally that person. Like I'm not as bad, but I want it, like this is my like public apology to making fun of my parents where like they had jobs, they were working, like we have businesses that we're running, we can't keep up on this stuff. And so it's very interesting to see how things are changing. And I've been intrigued by this also because I think there is like the older generation is starting to use more of this like Gen Z, and we are this in-between world that like my parents know how to search YouTube and TikTok to like use it as a search engine. So like I think this article is focused on Gen Z, but I think the bigger picture is like it could be spanning 2 generations on the very like on the older end and on the younger end. And Like, what do we do about it, Dan? Like, you're the marketing expert. What do we do?
Right. Yeah. So where my head goes is like, I think YouTube, to your point, like in this article talking about Gen Z preferring YouTube for long form, just means, yes, that's where the long form goes. And we have to have long form content, where if we are, reviewing our own service or product, we're doing like a 12 to 20 minute video about it for YouTube specifically. Now that video can get chopped up into a ton of shorts, or you can then create dedicated shorts that are like much smaller reviews or whatever, or faster, that are then for other platforms like TikTok. And I think where this goes is, I think what's happening really is that this younger generation might actually understand economy of time. And so they're using TikTok to get the quick hit to see if it's worth to invest into the deeper content. And I don't know if that's true. I have no research behind that. This is me just musing that because they know what these platforms are good at. It's like, well, look, I'm thinking about these products or this thing I'm looking to buy. Let me just see what's out there, and just going through and just seeing who's got what, who's talking about what. Oh, that's interesting. Then I'm going to go to YouTube and see what's deeper to learn more, to see whether I should invest or et cetera. I just have this feeling that might be what it is. So, like, hats off to a really smart Gen Z generation, and understanding that there isn't more time. So, but that's the strategy I think to employ is have your long form, cut it into short, and put it out there, because now you can touch multiple generations. But if you're not doing it, you're going to get left behind. And to your point about established brands, they are doing it. So once I searched North Face, they were all over the place. The thing was the maybe viral influencers weren't touching their gear, or maybe North Face wasn't giving them their gear.
Sure.
Maybe these established brands feel they have a stature that's above these others, and they don't want to be compared with them. That is a whole, element to it. Like Timbuk2, they've been around for decades, as a bag maker, everything from high-end leather attaché cases to travel luggage. They're a higher end brand. Do they really want to be lumped in with a brand new viral bag?
Sure.
So I think that's playing in here as well. But if we're small local businesses and we've got local influencers, let's get them our stuff so that they can create the short form content that's going to go way further than anything our brands can put out there ourselves, just because those influencers have got just larger following. And if they're locally focused and your business is locally focused, it can totally work for you there too. You just got to get them in. I mean, look at all the food TikTokers and influencers in that way. They're going to a restaurant, eating the food, giving a little review, and that can work for services. It can work for products. It can work for your shop. You just got to engage them and bring them in, to make that happen. So, yeah.
So interesting. Like, I don't know. This just reminds me of like the truth, right, in the world. Like we have endless things around us. Like we have endless products and endless services and endless, like it reminds you of how big the world really is. And like there's finite, like we'll never see everything that there is to see. And like to your point, like you're getting, when you search the bags, like you're getting all the top virals, but like I think it's important to remember that there are other amazing brands that may not be top of your feed that like are still great things to research. And like
100%.
How much of the top of the feed is really drawing audience is, I don't know. It's actually mind-blowing to me. So we'll just leave it there.
Yeah. But this dovetails into our second, topic for today in the second article, also from Sprout Social, was the rise of something called episodic content on social media. They put out a survey where they asked over 2,000 global social media users, not brands, users, what they prioritize in 2026. 57% said posting original content series is what they prioritize in terms of their consumption. And the reason that they prioritize that content was that it was directly tied with the fact that those channels and content allowed them to interact with the brand. or with the influencer, etc. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And so what do we mean by episodic content? Basically, literally, it's literally making content that tells a story, maybe not like an actual plot where it's like we're continuing where we left off in the next video. That's not what I mean by telling a story. It's we are sharing values of our company. We're understanding, or certain content that evokes the values of our company, that evokes the utility of our products, of our services, etc. But it's through the eyes of a recurring character. So there's a character that literally shows up in all of these videos again and again and again. They focus on human connection. Otherwise, how do you have a story if you don't have human connection? And then, like I said, allows for that feedback. So you'll get real-time feedback in the comments, and you want that, and you want to respond to it, and you want to get with it, and maybe use it to influence future videos and future content. So yes, there's a couple brands that are doing this right now, doing some interesting things. The first, that I know I've come across was Under Armour. They launched something called Lab 96 Studios. It's an in-house content studio that they're delivering athlete stories. So they're getting real athletes to tell their stories, or they're revisiting that athlete in multiple pieces of content, telling that story over multiple pieces. It could be a football player or an emerging women's, basketball player, or off sport like flag football, ultimate frisbee, etc., because they're wearing Under Armour and they tell their stories, but they're showing them in Under Armour gear. And so, that's just that taking that story and telling it through a slightly different lens. And this allows people to identify with these people rather than just the brand, but you identify with these people. I want to be more like that. I want to wear Under Armour. That's just one of quite a few that stand out. There's another brand, Alexis Bitar. I have not watched this or looked at this much, but they created a character and a character sidekick played by two actresses, and it's a fashion brand. Here, I should probably share this. So it's a fashion brand. They created these characters, and basically they showcase the brand's jewelry, handbags, etc. But they're playing these characters through this video while wearing and having these products. So you're following these characters over and over again. Something that comes to mind for companies with smaller budgets, et cetera, is, do you have that diehard customer that you can follow that might want to be part of this, or client where, think of this as like a case study. Honestly, you could interview, this client at various parts of the journey and then edit that together into a cohesive, storyline down the line that you cut into multiple pieces, et cetera. I mean, it's really as simple as that. Is kind of what we're talking about here.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, because it seems as though it's not, this is different than like the business owner or like somebody from the business being the character. It is somebody else being a character. Yeah. Yes. Like it is going beyond just the face of a business or, whatever that is. Right. I found it interesting in this article that it actually mentioned like you could even entertain hiring like an actor or hiring somebody to do this. And like that's crazy to me. Like yeah. The fact that this is taking off. However, it makes sense. Like, let's put that in perspective. Like so it takes storytelling in my mind to the next level. So instead of somebody reading and putting themselves in the shoes of what you're trying to get them there, they are now seeing themselves as that character, as that person. Like, so it's, and to me, this is beyond like a commercial. Like this is, what I mean? They're using social media to make this happen. I love your idea of like, if you could actually find or have a customer that would be willing, that could be huge. Yeah.
I mean, I'm also thinking like if you wanted to hire others but lower budgets or whatever, look at local universities. Do they have digital media programs where they're looking for experience? They can use maybe the professor, they've got a way to work with them. So over the course of a whole semester, this whole class or a group of the class is putting together this whole campaign for and with you. Understanding that they're not a high-end, a design studio or film studio. Another thing that hits me, and you said employees. It could be an employee. Why not? If you got somebody internally that's awesome, follow them in their journey. You know, maybe they're working with a client and you just want to tell that story, or they're working on a project that you are really big on. You know, especially if you're like a manufacturing company and you manufacture something that has very many parts or whatever, and you've got a project manager that loves doing content, wants to be on camera, like make them part of that story and focus on them getting this project from start to finish and what that looks like. You know, I think there are great stories that can be told in that way. Yeah. But I mean, the reason we're bringing this up is to go back is that, you know, basically 60% of social media users want to see meaningful content. They want to see a story. They're not just out there to your point, they're not wanting to see an ad, you know? And so of all the content that is being ingested, they want to see original content that tells a story, you know? And so as brands, if we're looking to get ourselves out there, we just have to start thinking in this way of who can I follow day to day? And who do I have internally potentially that already wants to be a champion in that way and has that kind of drive, et cetera, or, you know, do I hire outside? Do I, et cetera? But, you know, all important, especially to that first, you know, article we talked about with so many of younger generations using social media as their search engine. If our content is out there, we are way more likely to be found and to find new followers. So, yeah.
And I think this is just further proof that, like, if you're listening to this and you're not already leaning into this, it's probably something that you should be considering or putting on the docket very soon for marketing. And I know, like, our next thing we're going to dive into is some of those marketing trends, which I think is like a great segue into that. But the last thing that I want to note on this is the very beginning of this article I thought was very interesting, of the one we were just talking about, because it talks about, like, scrolling social media now, like, it really is nothing like it was even just a few years ago, right?
God, yeah.
So, like, I remember it was always photos of, like, friends and family and only people that you knew. And I will say now, like, I totally see this video after video or thing after thing is people that I don't actually know. And so I think just the change in social media has become very apparent. So one, I think it's pushing us to get our relationships back with our friends and family in a more focused way, while two, giving us the opportunity to lean into some of these new things that are emerging. And, you know, this is just yet another one of them for brands.
Are you aware? I found this a while ago, but it took me a while to find it. Facebook actually has a friends only feed. There's a little icon, like when you're looking at your feed at the top, one of them, and you click it, and it's just only stuff from your friends. And, like, I'll tell you, that's where I go now. I just go when I'm personally on Facebook, let's just say, that's where I go. I just go straight to the friends feed, and that's it. And I engage with friends. And when I found that, I was just like, what? Where has this been? Because remember, back in the day, you used to be able to, like, filter your news feed and say, I only want XYZ. And, like, you're totally right. You look at this news feed now, and it's literally all ads and or suggestions of, I don't know why I'm getting them for some of them. I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Well, but I think it's amazing that they have to have, like, where you can go to a friends only feed, because that tells you how things have changed.
Look at it. Yeah.
And, like, what people really are consuming. Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
It's crazy.
To that point, I don't know if you saw the news on this. Facebook is changing the way they label their ads. You know, they say sponsored right now in, like, gray text. They're shortening it to just ads, ADS. So it's even less visible. And they're calling it's for clarity. And it's really just so there's even less in the feed. So everything just looks like it's normal feed content. That's all. I get it. I get why they're doing it. It's so we don't know what's an ad and what isn't, but they legally have to somehow tell us it is. Anyway, neither here nor there.
And so much.
All right. Yeah, right. All right. So our final article for today comes from Art Unlimited, top marketing trends small businesses should watch in 2026, specifically the rise of generative AI, more specifically talking about generative engine optimization. So a new discipline called generative engine optimization is emerging alongside traditional SEO, focused on earning citations inside AI generated answers. Numbers are accelerating. Gartner is predicting, okay, and I actually did a talk on this, so I know these numbers already. They're predicting a 25% drop in traditional search volume by the end of 2026, which is looking really conservative, actually. AI platforms like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google's AI overviews now process billions of queries monthly, and the behavior shift is clear. Users are getting their answers from summaries, not clicking through to the sources. Early data shows that content optimized for AI citation achieves 43% higher mention rates in generative responses. And so this also then holds true for voice search, because anything in voice search is coming pretty much from the AI. I guess my first question for you out of this is, do you do a lot of voice search?
Not so much. Maybe from my phone, but I still am pretty old school, which is like I can type it in pretty quickly. Like, let me just type away.
You don't do the whole "Hey Google, Hey Siri" thing?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you, I just did it and my phone's on, so you can tell I do it all the time. I do it a ton. So much, Jenny calls it my other wife. Or my girlfriend.
That's awesome.
I think she even jokes it's my mistress from time to time. It's really funny. Go ask your mistress, what the hours are for whatever.
She'll give you an answer.
Yeah, right. She'll give you an answer. I don't know.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah.
That's the best.
So I'll say I do a ton of voice. I hate the AI summaries on search, I'll say. I don't appreciate them. I don't think they're as accurate yet, is where my brain goes. So I'm in kind of an old school mindset as well on that, of like, I think I'd rather do the search, go through the actual results, look for the reputable sources, et cetera, and do actual research.
So I don't know if this is just coincidence or if there is something changing, but I have noticed in the past 2 weeks, the AI summaries have way less valuable information. Like, I would say before the last few weeks, like, it was actually bringing up like links or like different things. And now it's more like, and it might just be what I'm searching, but I've noticed this across the board. It's like a bullet point summary with no real information.
Same.
You
Yeah.
still have to now go look further
Yeah.
for information. Why is that changing? Like, that's an interesting. It's been very noticeable lately.
Yeah, no, I've noticed the exact same thing. I was doing a couple searches and was just like, and I did read the AI summary. It was like, there's nothing here. Like, I'm looking for a real link to click or something. I'm just like, what does this mean? Like, it's like gobbledygook a little bit. It's just like, there's words here that don't really say anything.
Yes.
I think I know what it is. I think that they are rolling out the AI so fast that the quality control piece isn't keeping up. Like, they're just rolling it to new sections. And unless that new topic has had a ton of searches and people are giving it feedback, it doesn't have good responses yet. I think the other piece might be that AI isn't understanding the top articles of that search, or for some reason are using different articles than the top articles of that search, which I've actually noticed. Like, if I look at the AI summary and what's being linked to, and then I go to the summary results, the top summary results are not the ones being linked to in the AI summary. And that's very surprising. I don't know if it's because those ranked top pages or sites are like blocking AI from mentioning them or something. I don't know what that is, but I've noticed that there's a disconnect between the two. And I would have thought that they would have been the same.
Yeah.
So, I mean, either way, we want to rank into AI. And so we need content that does that. So, and the reason is, what this data is saying is that people are stopping at the AI search. You and me are outliers here. We, most don't continue down. They read that AI thing and they're done. They don't click to the website. So if you want to be cited, and what's interesting is in those AI citations, they do say where it's from. They'll say, as published in, or, as shared by, et cetera. So you'll get your mention in there with the content. And so if you want to be seen as an authority, you need to get put in there, because you're not going to get the click anymore. Like, it's really dropping drastically.
Yeah.
Like we were saying, a 25% drop in click volume, search volume, and it's probably higher than that. So if you want to be showing up when people are searching things like, hey, where is there a plumber near me? Or, how do I fix a leaky pipe, et cetera, and you want your brand to show up, you need the content that shows up there. And what gets you up there is the same thing that did with SEO. That's the interesting secret here, is it's no different. If you do really good content that answers the question and answers people's questions and sub questions to the main topic, et cetera, you will rank. And it's just all about answering questions and having definitive answers. So there is a way to answer them, I guess I should say. You need to have definitive answers. I don't know if you've ever come across an article that's just like, hey, how much does it cost for X? And you read this article and it's just like, well, it depends. It could be, depends on these factors and these factors. They never tell you what it could cost. That doesn't get you ranked. You have to avoid that. Your answer can expound into that area, but it has to start with a definitive answer that gives value to who's reading. Because the truth is, there is a range or there is a number. There always is, So when you say, how much does it cost to change it, to get a new furnace, yeah, sure. It could be $8,000 all the way up to $20,000, depending on the situation and depending on the brand purchased and how difficult. Yeah, of course. But I just said there's a range. It could be anywhere from $8,000 to $20,000, depending on here are your factors. That's a full answer. Those are the things that get. Those are the kinds of things that get mentions and get citations through everything. So, I personally think, and then I'll let you weigh in here because I've been talking a lot. I personally think that generative engine optimization to get into generative AI is really just make sure you're focusing on solid SEO work. And so that's really well written content, but there is some technical stuff on the back end as well, which may require somebody who understands how to do that. There's markup language and other things to help search engines and AI understand what's on the page, rather than hoping that they understand what we wrote. So there's ways to do that in the HTML behind the scenes a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of my take on this whole topic.
Yeah. So when I read through this article, a few things had stuck out, and it's funny that you were talking about like HVAC or, that world, because it does reference saying like, the generative AI, there's no secret that this is going to definitely impact how any small business approaches marketing going forward. But it specifically mentions trade industries. So like your roofers, your HVAC, electrical. I mean, I would even put cleaning services in here, right? Roofing. I think of those services and they are busy, right? Like they are busy all day long actually performing the work that their business provides. And I thought it was interesting that this mentions like this is an opportunity for generative AI to allow them to be like have this online presence even when they're busy, right?
Yeah.
And I think the second piece of this, which you just touched on, is while it's great and AI is making things, I guess, easier in some ways, I would argue that this is where engaging with a partner, like a marketing agency partner, is like what is going to propel you farther than everybody else who is still like only utilizing AI to write all of their strategy. Because AI is great at maybe generating things, but there are so many nuances behind the scenes. And you just mentioned it with like HTML, right? Like there is so much value to the experts that is going to make all of this mesh together. Otherwise, you're going to just have broken pieces all over the place that like aren't doing as much as it really could be if you had somebody knowing on the back end, this is what you need to set up. This is the content you write. I mean, you just gave great tips. And like, that's how you propel yourself forward when everybody's competing for that AI window, right? Everybody is fighting for that. And so I think just having strategy behind it is how you get yourself ahead in the AI marketing game.
Yeah. Funny thing is it's all content. Content takes time and not everybody has it or the expertise. Yeah. And so I love what you're saying. Yeah, totally. 100%. Really.
But content without strategy is, you're wasting your time.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. Another AI heavy episode just happened that way. But before we wrap up, I know we want to go into our What the Biz moment. I think you got one today.
I do, but I'm going to change from what we originally talked about.
What?
Well, you were talking about the influencers and then you were talking about a restaurant. Funny. Like, I literally lived this. So my daughter and I were in Chick-fil-A eating like a late lunch, early dinner one day. And there was a table in the corner. They were, I don't want to call them disruptive, but they were a little bit louder than what you experience at a Chick-fil-A, right? And I was just like, what is happening over there? Well, as the whole thing progressed, they're actually this group, every single one of them was from a different area in the United States. They travel around doing food reviews, and they got the manager, like the main store owner, I think, of this specific Chick-fil-A's attention, and was like, let us influence for you. And like, they were showing all their followings, and like, they actually just did a review of the brand new Raising Cane's in our area. And they're like, let us put you ahead of them. And so we watched this play out in real time, and just like, they're recording in the restaurant and just all of the pieces. And so I have like two things around this that I just found funny, right? To those of us that don't fully understand influencers, that experience makes you just kind of step back for a minute and be like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, what is happening over there? And so like, I would say for certain markets, your clientele may not love that. Chick-fil-A, probably totally fine, right? Some upscale restaurant, I don't know, like, it might actually be detrimental to your image. So like, I say all of that just to bring full circle around how you use influencers. Just be aware of it, I would say. But it's clearly taking off. Like, a table of 6 from all different states. No idea how they met each other, but I just found it like very interesting. And then we left there and actually drove somewhere else. And my daughter's like, oh, those are the other influencers in town this week. And they're literally like on the street corner doing a video. And I was like, wow, it's right here. Like, it's happening in our backyard. So
that's cool. I think one thing I want to say is, can I chat with your daughter about getting in touch with some of these influencers? Because I want to get them into certain restaurants in town that I think need or deserve more play than Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's.
Well,
so the fact that she's got a pulse on things, I just want to know when they're happening, because I need to get other restaurants going here.
Well, I was like, how do you know that? You don't even have social
that's
media.
The thing. That's exactly. It's like, I had no idea either. And I'm just thinking, like, it's full circle. Remember, we're not going to be our parents. We're totally our parents. They know what's going on, and we have no idea. This is hilarious. Yeah, certain influencers coming through town. I think my thing here is like, I think it's what I would say is that's a fail for every locally owned restaurant. The fact that these influencers are at Chick-fil-A, a major chain that needs no help in brand or name recognition.
Amen.
Versus like that awesome pizza place that's locally owned, or the Mexican place, or that dessert bakery, that's locally owned. They're doing awesome stuff. Like, why are they not there? That's and I have 3 specific places in mind where I would want to send them. Like, that's where my brain goes. So that's a fail for everybody else, because it's a big thing. I'll say for me, like, there's a couple of people online that I watch, like one, Jay Kenji Alt. He's a chef. And he's got a YouTube channel. Now, he was at the Culinary Institute of America or something like that for forever, wrote a whole book that we call the Bible in our house, because it's awesome for cooking. It's absolutely amazing. I love this book so much. And if he goes to like Chicago to a restaurant, or if he goes to or if he came to Kalamazoo somewhere and said, this is the place to go, etc., I would be there in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. I would totally be there in a heartbeat. There is no ifs, ands, or buts. I would completely be there.
Well, it reminds me of, and I'm not going to think of their names right now, but there was 2 influencers that came from, are they England or somewhere?
Yes.
They were just in Michigan doing like a whole tour. They did all of the local stops. Like, they didn't go review chains. They didn't go like to your point, there are much more deserving or better places that don't need that type of, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
Chick-fil-A.
Josh and Jace. They were called
That's
Josh and
it.
Jace.
Yes.
Yeah, and they went all around Michigan. You know, from South Haven, Grand Rapids. They went all over. Kalamazoo,
UP, all over the
UP.
place.
Yeah, they went
Yes.
all over just to try food all over the place. But yeah, I would say those are the kinds of influencers. I've run into their stuff before, so I know who they are. And I think it's a cool, you know, it's neat finding that stuff online because it's almost like influencers are like when you have that friend that's just like, oh my God, you got to try this place. It's so cool. And they give you this cool story. That's what finding an awesome influencer that does this stuff or coming across it. That's what it feels like. It's like I'm finding this cool little thing that others don't know about. So the fact that these influencers were at Chick-fil-A just grinds my gears because there's cooler places to go in town. Anyway, okay.
Yep.
I think that's where we end today before I blow a gasket. So thank you for joining us for another episode. So much for hanging out with us today. Bridget and I, we know your time is super valuable, so I love that you're spending it here. If you found value in today's conversation, maybe you picked up a new strategy for your business, do us a favor. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That's the best way to help other business owners find our show and build their own path, to freedom. So if you've got a hurdle or facing a topic you want us to explore or share our expertise on, head over to whatthebiz.com, drop us a line. We love hearing your ideas. An entire episode out of yours. But until then, keep building, stay proactive, and we'll see you in the next one.